That's the name of today's Instagram Live with Natasha Edwina, who is a certified mindful coach, a marriage and family therapist based in the US. She also does some workshops and consultations on mindfulness and wellness coach. So hopefully Natasha will be joining us shortly. So again, just for the benefit of those of you who are joining, today's Instagram Live will be with Natasha Edwina, who is a certified mindful coach from America. She's also a marriage and family therapist, a wellness coach, amongst other things, and she also has a workshop next week, which I want to talk to her a little bit about, as well as her work on mindfulness and what it means and how it can help people overcome, or women in particular, overcome maybe some trauma and help improve their intimate life and their sexual life. Let me see if Natasha's here. Yeah, I think she is. Where is? Today's Instagram Live will be with Natasha Edwina, who is a certified mindful coach from America, from the United States. She's also a marriage. Oh, fantastic. Hi,
Hi,
Natasha.
Eve. How are you? How have you been?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
You look very well.
Oh, thank you. I still got some daylight here. It helps.
What time is it again over where you
It's
are?
noon. It's noon here on
Oh, okay.
Saturday. Are
Okay.
you at 8 p.m.?
It is 8 p.m. and the
Ah, okay.
weather's terrible in London at the moment. But thank you again for um well, for joining me. And again, there's a lot that I would like to cover. And again, I wanted for people to hear more about the work, the wonderful work that you're doing, especially on mindfulness. And we can talk a little bit later about your upcoming workshop. But before we get into that, do you mind giving a quick elevator pitch in terms of who you are and the work that you do?
Quick is not easy for the feminine, right? I'll try. But that's where our work aligns. So I started off as a marriage and family therapist, and I transitioned into a hypnotherapist and coach. And I got really interested in studying female sexuality as far as it works with empowerment. And my PhD studies were in mind body medicine, psychoneuroimmunology. So what I realized is when we relax the nervous system and learn, which is mindfulness, right? Relaxing the nervous system, being in the present moment, it allows trauma to heal, but it also is the key to expansive sexual states. So it's all about the nervous system. So I kind of deal with all things nervous system, whether it has to do mental health, sexuality, relationships, self-regulation, and then communication about all that.
Lovely, lovely. And again, some of the questions, forgive me if it sounds like I just want to explain, especially for the benefit of people who may not understand the differences
Yeah,
between like mindfulness and some of the terms we may use. Can you
sure.
explain what the difference is between a therapist and a coach?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why I got trained in both, because I felt that the paradigm of therapy was a little limiting. Therapists are wonderful for hearing your story, kind of giving you a nice warm hug, nurturing you, reparenting you, helping you grow your wings again and get out there, healing trauma. But a coach is like a coach, sports team, like, come on, I got you, let's get this, like, we're going. And so it's more future focused. Therapists might tend, although this is shifting because therapy is going more coach-like, therapists tend to shift more or focus more on the problem and the history, and coaching tends to focus on where you're going. So when I do my mind body consulting packages or programs, which is also involves coaching, we start at the end goal. So it's like, what do you want for your life? And we do a future self visualization. Now the cells of the body have been primed to go there. And then we just kind of work backwards, do what we need to do to get to that vision rather than staying in the past.
Lovely. And is that something that you came across like instead of going into coaching whilst you was doing your PhD?
Yeah.
Was that something that you found? Oh, lovely. And how was
Yeah,
that
well, it
going?
was personally transformative for me because it was a required course to take this coaching course in my PhD. My specialization is integrative mental health. So because I had a master's degree already in mental health, I was able to transfer that into the PhD and then study the overlap between the body and the mind, right? And it was one question that might be helpful for your viewers too, that really got me reevaluating my life. and then changed my whole life and my career, which is, what are you tolerating? And I was like, wow, if I'm going to ask my coaching clients what they're tolerating, I got to look at what I'm tolerating. And I was tolerating a marriage where there was no real emotional intimacy, and the sexual intimacy was unfulfilling for me, quite narcissistic partner. I was tolerating a job where I was exhausted and didn't have any energy for my kids when I got home. There was a lot of things I was tolerating. I was tolerating family members who were, imposing their beliefs on me as a grown woman, trying to shift and change who I was. And so as I started to unwind that question, everything shifted. I eventually resigned from my job. I was working at the school system 2 years later, and then kind of expanded my business. I always had a part-time psychotherapy practice 1 night a week. I expanded that, brought in coaching, brought in nutrition, brought in spirituality, and just kind of went my wild woo-woo ways. And it's been beautiful ever since. It's been about maybe 8 years now. So I'm really happy, really, really happy.
Wow. Wow. And again, just for the benefit of those of you who are joining, because I see some people joining the last few minutes, I'm speaking to Natasha Edwina, who is a certified mindful coach, as well as a marriage and family therapist, also a wellness coach. She's based in the United States. She's also got an upcoming workshop. I believe it's on the 21st of March.
We start on the 21st, Monday evening. It might not be great for UK people unless you're night owls, because I think we would start probably 1 a.m. your time. But hey, it's open, it's virtual, so anybody around the world can join. And it's a 12-week evidence-based process to heal trauma. And it's because we're focusing on the body. I went through years of therapy myself to heal sexual trauma from my childhood, and I couldn't get to it until I started looking at the body. So it's a process that it combines mind and body, and in equal measure. And in 12 weeks, evidence-based program shows that PTSD scores are down 80%, and at 6-year follow-up still down. So it's just a really powerful thing, not only for people wanting to heal sexual trauma or prepare their nervous system to have these more expansive sexual states, but also really great for just pandemic stress and pandemic trauma and all the things that, we've had to navigate through the last 2 years.
And would it be the same time? Is it from 5 to 7 PST each week?
Every Monday for 12 weeks. And then we meet once a month after that for the remainder of the year. You get a bonus kind of maintenance community, because I found that really important these days.
And are they recorded? So if, for example, someone like in Europe that can't attend live because of the time difference, is it possible to listen after?
No, we don't record it. We'll record. So basically, it's a very structured group, and the first half is processing. And then we do an experiential activity, which I do record for people that have to miss. But you can't really miss more than 2 groups. Otherwise, it disrupts the container. So just like in the sexual space, your book was so wonderful, Kunyaza, about talking about setting the container, right, for the sexual intimacy and all the things that the masculine can do to create the space. So this group creates the space through this very masculine energy structure where we know exactly what to expect. It's 2 hours. We start with meditation, we end with meditation. I teach a little bit of the science that comes from my PhD, and then we do an experiential practice, and it's a different one each week. Each week builds on the next, and then we process what comes up. And so that final processing is what really starts to alleviate the trauma, because when you're relaxed, people don't realize you can heal through pleasure. But when you're relaxed, it's a very pleasurable state. When I do hypnosis, I get such a kick out of it, because people walk out of my office floating and they're just radiant and smiling. It makes me so happy, which is not how you often leave a therapy session. You might be in tears or like really broken open. And so creating that pleasurable state in the body, the trauma just lifts to the surface and you don't have to go digging for it. And so when it comes up and you speak to it, it moves from right brain where it gets stuck to left brain where we have to form words, and then it dissolves. It's gone. So it's a really powerful way to heal trauma. And what happens is I only take 10 people to keep it really small and intimate. And so you build these really intimate relationships with this group, and these people become mirrors for all the other relationships in your life, right? Somebody says something and you're like, oh, that's my mom or that's my dad. And because they bring that up in you, you can start to process it in a really safe way. Which then you can generalize to your life. And then we're using really up-leveled communication, really mindful communication. So it's teaching people how to speak to their lovers too, in a way that you can get to the heart of the matter and the feelings. So it's a really, really powerful group.
And if people want to know more, all the information is on your website, and
It's on my
correct? So,
website, yeah, which
yeah.
is my name, Natasha Edwina, and then you'll see a tab that says groups, and it's called Inclusion. And I named it Inclusion not only because we're including mind, body, and spirit in the healing process, but it's also tended to be a very culturally diverse group. Again, people all over the world, all different cultures, all different religions. Like, you can be whoever you want to be. You're welcome here. You just have to have your heart open. So, and my co-facilitator, Shafar Graves, who's amazing. Yeah, amazing, wise sage on the top of the mountain, does energy work and qigong. And qigong is has some evidence base for healing cancer and reversing cancer through its work through the immune system. So this group is, like I said, when you heal the immune system, you can improve your immunity, you can heal chronic illnesses, you can expand your sexual states. It's just, it's when you're moving into this lifestyle. It's really a lifestyle of being gentle to the nervous system.
Amazing. And back to female sexuality.
Yeah.
How can
our favorite topic?
Yeah, my favorite topic. How can mindfulness or mindfulness coaching help women in particular, and men as well, who want to help their female partner have a more satisfying sexual experience?
Yeah, well, again, great question. It's the lifestyle. You start to shift the way you are, the way you show up in the world. And just like in your book where you talk about the communication with a woman and the way that you talk to her now prepares her for, this expansive bliss state or this expansive sexual state, it's kind of the same with each of us. The way we live our life, all the other 23 hours, is going to impact everything. It bleeds into everything. So it's just a total different way of living. And I got into this when I was in a mindfulness class in my PhD, and the professor said, well, write about something that's really interesting to you, for your research paper. And I thought, well, yeah, I just gone through a divorce. I think I spent about a year of celibacy after that, just kind of figuring out who I was again. And then all of those years of sexual repression burst out of me, and I was like, whoa, this has been building up for so many years, and I had all this sexual energy and I didn't know what to do with it. It was just like, it was crazy. It was fascinating to me, so fascinating that I wanted to study it. And so and the research, and so I wrote a paper on mindfulness and female arousal. And when I went into the research, I realized there just really wasn't very much, which you've probably found too. And that's why I loved your book so much, because I probably read every research study on extraordinary sexuality, and most of them were in your book as well that you cited. So I could see that we were both tapping into the same information. But in some of the research, when they compared the male desire cycle with the female desire cycle, it really was, she's very process oriented, just like we speak. We don't know sometimes what we're going to say until we verbalize it. And if men try to follow our speaking, sometimes they're like, I don't know what you're saying. And we're like, I don't know either, but I'll tell you when I finish, so whereas men try to, they're more analytical, linear, and our sexuality is the same way. So men, kind of have a very kind of typical experience or arousal state where there's a stimulus or they're kind of always aroused. And then they peak, orgasm, ejaculation, done, rest. And women are very different. They have to be willing to be aroused, and there's different triggers. It's not just like the same trigger, and then that shifts throughout the life cycle. But we're more interested in the process. How connected are we? What's the whole experience? And women tend to see sexual experiences as a spiritual experience. Our brain lights up as if it's having a spiritual experience. And I had Golden Drake on my podcast, and she said, she calls herself a life midwife, very spiritual Pisces kind of lady. And she said, of course, the woman's brain would light up as if she's having a spiritual experience, because she's actually calling a womb, another soul, into her womb, So it's this beautiful concept of why that might be, which is a little bit different than men's experience. But when they taught mindfulness to men, so rather than trying to give her an orgasm, he's actually trying to give her pleasure moment to moment. Do you like this stroke? Do you like this stroke? What do you want? In this communication, both in mind and body, he actually rated higher satisfaction rates of the sexual experience as well. So it's like women are sort of the leaders, I feel like, in this sexual space because they slow it down. And they make it juicier and more sustainable, I guess you would say. And so when he allows her to take the lead in that way, it's great for both of them. And it's a meditation. Sex is the most ancient meditation. Osho would say this. You know, before we knew that we could breathe and all about that. I mean, we obviously are always breathing, but like breathe in these deep breaths and stimulate the vagus nerve and, you know, go into these transcendental states from meditation. We were always having sex. It was procreation. So that was the original meditative state.
Lovely. Well said, very well said. Another quick question. It's about the female orgasm. Do women need to orgasm in order to be sexually satisfied?
No, the research says no. We love orgasms. They're great, but we don't always need them. And I don't want the guys to be like, okay, then I don't have to try, because it's not about that. It's just that we have very different appetites for pleasure as women. There's sometimes, you know, because we have these varying cycles too, hormonal cycles. And so sometimes we're insatiable and you can't give us enough orgasms. We just want to keep going and going and going. And other times it's like, you know what, I just really want to be held and kissed on the neck and, you know, whatever else. And that's what she wants as far as that fills her pleasure cup. So we basically have a pleasure cup, and it's our job to communicate to our partners what it is that we're needing in that moment. And so if we take the emphasis off of orgasm, it's actually more likely that we will reach orgasm. And I think if there is to be any goal in sex, it would be to have the whole experience be orgasmic, you know, and to get the body so tingly and in such a state of bliss that just expands through the whole experience. And then we can have these states of 1 hour, 2 hour lovemaking, which is just waves of orgasm, which is very pleasurable. And then it doesn't even matter. It's like, did you orgasm? Well, who cares? Like if it was an actual scientifically documented orgasm or not, I was like out of this planet, out of this world for an hour. So that's kind of how women operate when we reach that sexual state. Yeah.
And also, I'm interested to hear your views, especially from your research on female sexual dysfunction. The only reason because I've seen a number of studies where I think women are I'll say misdiagnosed as being sexually dysfunctional because of how, unfortunately, and it's generally obviously men, how we're kind of viewing women's sexuality. I just wanted to hear some of because I find it quite problematic the way you see some estimates, they say 43% of women, and others say even higher than that. And I'm just wondering, is it because we have a misunderstanding of female sexuality and the female response cycle? Or just want to hear your views on female sexual dysfunction. What
100%. And thank you for asking that. And thank you again for your book. It was just so amazing that you centered kind of the female perspective and the non-dominant narrative, right? Both with female perspective, both an African perspective, and bringing the sacredness back to both of those, because I learned so much about, you know, the indigenous African perspective from your Kunyaza book. And I thought, wow, this is so beautiful. I just love how, you know, the Rwandan culture kind of looks at intimacy and marriage and all of these things. It made so much sense. And I feel like female sexuality is that same way. It's just the non-dominant. We learn mostly about sex from porn, unfortunately, or movies. And it's kind of built for the male gaze. And that again, surface level, more linear, quick perspective of things, which is very helpful in times of crisis and, you know, all these things. I'm not male bashing at all, but it's just that 95% of the world is kind of operating on that surface level, and there's so much more for us to discover. And so when you compare female sexual response to that male sexual response, which is more quick, surface level, she appears dysfunctional. And she's not dysfunctional. In fact, Dr. Gina Ogden says that women hold cultural oppression in their erotic anatomy. And so if you look at all of the sexism, all of the stuff that women have dealt with for the last 5,000 years, and especially melanated women, that is shutting down their erotic anatomy. And so they are not sexually dysfunctional. It's a culture that has shut down their most creative power source. And so when we start to realize we're not dysfunctional, this stuff in the culture needs to shift. We start doing our healing, again, healing our nervous system and being mindful about the people that we allow into our energy space, then we can start to take our power back. But with female sexual dysfunction, because after about a year, so some of the research found that after about a year of a new relationship, women are not aroused constantly, kind of like men are. So men kind of, unless they have some kind of hormonal issue, are constantly kind of walking around somewhat aroused and they're just waiting for that opportunity. And women are like that the first year of a relationship, and 10% of women will be like men. They'll have higher testosterone levels and they'll kind of always be aroused. But 90% of women, and this is according to the very limited research, so please remember that too, 90% of women will lose that arousal flame after about a year, and then she has to be willing to be aroused. So if you introduce the right triggers, then she will match his desire. But if she is not triggered to be aroused, she might think she's dysfunctional. And what actually happens is women who think they are sexually dysfunctional, which this happened to me in my marriage, I was just bored. I was bored with the same sexual process every single day. The 3 minutes in the morning is not going to do it. And that's okay once in a while. A quickie is fine, you know, but there should be variety. Women crave variety. We crave, you know, this wildness. That is the feminine energy. It's expansive, it's creative, it's exploratory. And the masculine energy, which is so beautiful when he is creating that safe container and consistently showing up for his family as a provider, as a protector. If he carries that over and goes too far with that into the bedroom and wants to have the same process every single time, she's going to be bored and she's going to think she's sexually dysfunctional. She just hasn't had the right stimulus or trigger. So for heterosexual relationships or people who are their partner is a female or a feminine identified person, then they're going to have to get to know their person's triggers, because it might be different than your last girlfriend or your last partner. And so for her, it might be that you do the dishes, or it might be that you create the space and make it really lovely for her. Maybe she needs food, maybe you need to feed her, maybe you need to pay for dinner and that just gets her wet, you know, that sort of thing. And when you understand her particular set of triggers, and then you can constantly feed those to her and provide them, she's going to be able to match your arousal cycle and not be dysfunctional. So it's a deep conversation, and it's a social justice conversation.
And what's generally been the response from, especially from men, when they've heard like this very different sexual scripts from what we're kind of being used to in programs about how to turn a woman on, especially like in a long-term relationship or in marriage? What has generally been the response?
Men love it. Men love it. I have probably almost half or more male clients now than I used to, because they really want to learn about female sexuality, and it's a safe place if they come and hear it from me, because they can open up about their insecurities and they just are curious. They're eating it up. They're hungry. They want to know and they want to bring it back to their partner, and their wives are loving it. They're calling me like, thank you, Natasha, thank you. So it's, you know, I tend to work with men that are more in their, I guess maybe like late 40s, 50s, 60s. So they've kind of gone off and conquered the world already and created their success. And so now they're interested in coming back and nurturing their relationships. But I also think that younger men are very interested, because younger men, let's say like the more millennial men, are just starting to learn about the female anatomy, and they have a better understanding about the equality issues and social justice issues that women have. They're more aware of those issues that women have faced, so that's kind of already in place. And then they just want to understand how her body operates and how they can bring her the most amount of pleasure, because it makes him feel good. And the masculine, you know, he really just lives to serve. He wants to please a woman. I feel like everything he does, even if he's off trying to conquer the world and make money or whatever, it's because he wants to bring that back to a woman and his family. So even if he's neglecting his girlfriend to go do that, ultimately it's for his, you know, wife or future wife. And so if we understand that, and you understand that, you say women need to be narcissistic in bed, it's true, because when she's pleasured, he'll be pleasured, because he's creating that, he's helping facilitate that for her.
Amazing, amazing. I
Yeah.
love that. And is there any words of advice that you could give to women, especially women who are maybe like in a long-term relationship or married, and they feel like they're sexually suppressed, but they've never vocalized this to their partner for a number of years, but now they feel that they're entitled to pleasure? How would they navigate that conversation to actually bring that up with their husband?
Whew, that's a good one, because once you're already in this established pattern, right, in this established relationship, there's that male ego that can be, men are incredibly sensitive, and we think that men aren't emotional. They are just as emotional, if not more, than women. It's just that they haven't been able to express it. And so when a female partner, or a woman in general, says anything to him that he could slightly even perceive as criticism, he just shuts down. He's hypersensitive to that. So as women, we have to understand that we have to stroke our men, like we have to tell them how wonderful they are and all the things that they do for us. So if she really had something about sexuality, she would talk about it not during the sexual experience per se, but maybe when they were having a nice rapport conversation or making dinner together or something, and she would give him, we call it the compliment sandwich, where she'd give him a compliment and be like, you are so good at this, and I love our sex life, and you are so sexy, and whatever it is that feels true and authentic to her. And then, I would like more of this, or I would like to try this. Would you be willing to provide that for me? And women, when they use the words provide and protect, again, it stimulates that, oh yeah, that's, that healthy masculine. He's like, yeah, of course. And then and then when he does it, he delivers and it's good, then you give up, thank you, more of that, please. So it's kind of like the way that we say it is really important. But what happens a lot of times with women, and I've been there too, is that we stay quiet for so long that we build up resentment. And then we start to give up, and then pretty soon it bursts out. We're like, well, you, rah, 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 rah. And then it's like, oh man, now we got to go into therapy to heal the communication, and both partners will shut down. So I think it's, if you can handle that communicative process with him, that's a good place to start. But also, she needs to go explore what turns her on so that she can even communicate it to him. And I found most women don't even have the slightest clue of what turns them on, because we've never been taught. And again, in your book, you talk about the vigilantes, the sengas. Why don't we have that here? Like a wise woman that we could go to, and she would teach us all about our bodies. I feel like that's what my podcast is for my 15-year-old daughter. She's going to have like a better understanding of that. But we have to do experiments. And so unfortunately, what women have done is they've tried to learn about what turns them on through their partners, through these, oh, not that. Oh yeah, that worked. And unless the male partner really knows how the female body works, she might not ever discover that. And so what do we call women who are trying to understand what turns them on and what their pleasure is? Whores. We call them whores. So, starting to reframe even that label and that look, oh, it's a woman who just really wants to understand herself and wants to understand how pleasure works in her body. So if we had better sex education and better communities for learning this, that would be really great. And one of the basic ways that women learn pleasure, again, through the nervous system, learning breath work, learning movement, moving their body. That sort of thing, it starts to unlock the energy that now can be generalized into the sexual experience.
Wonderful, wonderful. Again, just for the benefit of for those of you who are joining, I'm speaking to Natasha Edwina, who is an American-based certified mindful coach, a marriage and family therapist, a wellness coach, amongst other things. She has an upcoming workshop, which is starting on the 21st of March, which is for 12 weeks, both for men and women. And it'll be 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Is that correct? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Full information is on Natasha's website. That's Natasha. So you can see her. You can click the link on her Instagram page. I think you've got a link to your website. Is that correct?
And I think I've got a link to the group on there too. It's called Inclusion.
Okay.
So I think there's a link right there, my link in bio too. Yeah.
Lovely, lovely. She's also the host, which I forgot to mention earlier, of the Goddess Vibrations podcast, which is a podcast to sexually empower women. Is that correct?
Yeah, Goddess Vibrations, a spiritual sexual empowerment show. It is about this a kind of spiritual sexuality. That was my dissertation topic. And it was meant to be a fun pandemic side project while I was diving into the research to kind of break it up. Turns out I took a break from my PhD, again, pandemic related, but now the podcast has kept going. So we're about 2.5, gosh, we're in season 2 still, until May. You were on last season. Everybody loved that episode about can every woman squirt. And it's really about female sexuality and bringing, again, those non-dominant perspectives out, but also female sexuality is very, it's like energy medicine. It's very comprehensive and deep. So it's also topics that, are systemic and look at the deeper layers of things. So it's, we talk about intimacy, we talk about relationships, we talk about dating, we talk about mental health, we talk about the nervous system. It's just really good topics.
Lovely. I'm interested in the subtitle. Is it this spiritual, sexually empowered woman? Is that correct? Would you say sensuality or sexuality and spirituality, are they interlinked in your view?
I think so, because if you think about like the difference between religion and spirituality, religion is what we do. You can religiously brush your teeth, right? You can do it every day, and it doesn't mean that you're like really in the moment with brushing your teeth. You could be thinking about your taxes, or you could be thinking about a TV show or whatever. But spirituality, to spiritually brush your teeth, you would be showing up and you'd be doing it fully embodied, and you'd be noticing each bristle going over your gums, and oh, isn't that interesting? And you're observing the whole experience and you're immersed in it. And so we can religiously go to church, or we can spiritually go to church or temple, or wherever our place of worship is, and we can religiously have sex, or we can spiritually have sex. And it's about really fully being there in the moment, not closing your eyes and imagining somebody else, not like like thinking about baseball or whatever else. It's just like really being in that moment. And so when you're really in that moment, you are tuning into all the senses. So you are being sensual. And the more of the senses that you can observe and notice in that sexual experience, it's going to be more powerful, especially for the feminine. So it's really interesting, but if you just yoni gaze at a woman, so you're just observing her genitalia and you're saying, I'm noticing that it's getting puffy now. I'm noticing your yoni is turning a lovely color of, purple or whatever else, like her yoni will respond just to being observed. And so it brings the energy and blood flow to her body. That's a very sensual experience rather than, and spiritual experience rather than a religious kind of experience. So that's how I see it.
And being in the moment and being present, is that something that, from your experience, that both men and women struggle with in the bedroom? Because I liked what you differentiate between having religious sex, like where it's just, I don't know, very mechanical, as opposed to being in the moment and
inconsistent and yeah.
Yeah,
I think both men and women do struggle, especially over here. I mean, I don't know what it's like in the UK or but yeah, over here it's very, it's just kind of this like corporate kind of mindset of like produce productivity, forgetting to rest. It's like you're just doing all the time, and you're not really present. And I also, I do hypnosis, and I know that 95% of the time we're just on autopilot. We're just operating from whatever's in our subconscious mind, whether it's good or bad. And only 5% of the day are we really just mindful and noticing the colors and noticing all the details of our environment. And if we can start to spread out that 5% to a greater portion of the day, our sex life is going to improve too, because we're going to carry that over into the sexual experience. Or maybe that's where you start. Maybe you start with just being more mindful during your sexual experiences, because if it's good, it's a little bit easier to stay present too, if there's a lot of energy. And it's okay if, you're with someone and you're not feeling it. Don't push through. There's other ways to just slow it down, change it up, or maybe even pause or stop. There's no reason to have this outcome.
Lovely. And are there any mindfulness practices that a single woman that's not sexually active can do in order to tap into her sensuality?
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite one is dancing. So just putting on music that you find sensual or sexy, or it could be even music that brings up an emotion that is kind of stuck in your body and you want to express. Because when we're holding on to all these emotions uh, and they need to be digested, it's kind of like being super full and now we can't move. So we want to be able to move through that emotion. And then you can put it on before you even get out of bed and just kind of start to just slowly move and stretch and dance. And if you're the sort of woman who is visually turned on by seeing your own body, you can dance nude, you can put on lingerie. I always say lingerie is more for the woman than the man. It's really to make her feel sexy, make her feel good, which is going to benefit him. And so, doing that kind of practice can also start to flip you loving your body. And in Gina Ogden's research on spirituality and sexuality, she found one of the key parts of a woman having extraordinary sex rather than just ordinary sex was confidence, body confidence. And so look at what culture does to women with their bodies, right? We pick them apart. So if we reclaim that power and start loving our body, radical love, even if there's parts of it we don't like. And by the way, men don't usually, most men are adoring of women's bodies and they don't notice what we think our flaws are. They notice what is gorgeous about us. And so if we can start to think and see ourselves that way, that's the time the male gaze maybe is a really good thing for us. And work with that in this morning practice of dancing. I think that can be really powerful for women who aren't there yet. They're like, whoa, no, that's too much for me. Then start with breath work, start with breathing, start with just laying in bed and doing deep breathing for 3 minutes, 5 minutes. It starts to just teach your body how to let go. And if we're going to have this orgasmic state, we have to let go. We have to let go of the kind of emotional and psychological tension, and then we start to build up the physical tension that leads to orgasm. So that's the tease, that's the slow building of pleasure.
And are these the type of practices that you'll be going through and explaining in more detail in your upcoming workshop?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Lovely.
so we start with meditation, every group, and with meditation, and then we do a new type of either visualization or whatever. It's not specifically targeted at sexuality, but it is about mindfulness. It is about relaxing the nervous system. And I know when I was going through my divorce, I had to meditate about an hour in the morning, an hour at night, just to get through the day. It was so gnarly. But what ended up happening with those extended states in meditation is I was having blissful experiences in meditation. And I didn't miss sex at all because I was like totally blissed out during these meditative states. But that, again, sex being the original meditation, you can get there through meditation, you can get there through sex. But when you combine the two, it's really powerful. You can have kind of an out-of-body experience sometimes, feel like you're floating in the stars. And that's a totally healthy, natural state to be in, that when the more that we create this in our own bodies and our own relationships, imagine if everybody was having sex like that. The planet war would probably disappear. We wouldn't have any fight in us. We'd be like, nah, I just want to keep floating. So we practice that, and after 12 weeks you will have built that muscle and you have toned the vagus nerve, which is going to help with those extraordinary sexual states.
Speaking of divorce, actually, someone did ask a question which I was meaning to ask you, but you kind of answered it. So I'll ask anyway. So the woman's asked, what advice do you give to a woman who's trying to overcome divorce and doesn't feel that she's enough?
What was the first part of the question? I heard
What
overcoming divorce.
What advice would you give to a woman who is going through trying to overcome divorce, so she's recently been divorced and she doesn't feel that she's enough?
Put herself first. Radical self-love, radical self-care. For me, that always starts with the body. So healthy food, nutrition, supplements, exercise, just the basics, going out in the sunshine, remembering that there's no such thing as, I think Kirti, Shofar's partner, says this, there's no such thing as not enough in nature. You know, you see the waves don't like go away and be like, I'm not being appreciated, so I'm going to stop crashing to the shore. You know, the birds fly together. It's abundance. And so we get in touch with nature, we get in touch with our body, how powerful it is. Then, and then it's a process of changing our thoughts about blocking off those people that show up and tell us that we're not enough. I just went through this process in January and February. I'm peeling back a deep layer of this in myself. I left a narcissistic marriage, so you know, it's a long healing process to like get yourself back. And the last little piece for me was realizing, you know, you can't ever be abandoned unless you abandon yourself first. So if you know that you are taking care of yourself and you're not allowing like this kind of person who's not going to show up for you in your life, if they don't show up for you, that's not your issue, that's their issue, that's their shitty behavior. So don't allow those people in your life. Show up for yourself. You know, show up for yourself at the gym every day. Show up for yourself with your taking time for yourself. That's one of the things that I see the most. I work in a wellness center, luxury wellness center, and we get lots of stressed executives there. They don't take time for themselves. They're working these crazy long hours, and it's hard even to carve out an hour a day for a morning routine. So start shifting the way that you show up for yourself, and then people will start treating you differently.
Lovely. And a few more couple questions. Sorry, I'm bombarding you with a lot. I wanted it to be more of a conversation, but it feels like more of an interrogation. But I did get a lot of questions. I wanted to go through a lot of them, and I know some people sent some questions, but I want to prioritize the ones that I received early this week.
Okay.
I'm going to summarize. So there's a man that's basically asking for advice, how he can help his partner who he was recently told that she was abused as a child. What could he do to help her?
Oh, what a beautiful question. I love this sweet man. Yeah, you just provide a safe space for her, and you just listen and kind of, again, let her lead, because anybody that's been traumatized never wants to be pushed into something. Even when we do group work or classes, when you say, okay, now stand up, anybody that's experienced trauma doesn't want to hear that. It's more like, I invite you to stand up. That way they always have a choice of what to do or not to do. So he is creating a space where he's inviting her to do something, but never really, you know, pushing it. I know for me, again, I said I had sexual trauma as a child. There was a time in my early years where my nipples were numb. And if anybody tried to touch my nipples, I would get nauseous, because it was still the trauma of being touched there inappropriately, that my body was like, no, 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 not having that. But because my first lover was a long-term relationship, safe, we were best friends, we were buddies, and he was very patient with me and my body, I healed that. It melted away through his love and his caring, and just really doing more of what I did tolerate and what I did like, and doing less of what was uncomfortable for me. And the body starts to heal, you know, through that healing container again, and that allowing, as well as the individual work that we're doing. And so and I know that whether you're a man or a woman that has a partner that's experienced sexual abuse, it can be a little frustrating, because you're not going to, you know, be able to do some of the stuff that you might fantasize about or whatever, but you're doing something much deeper, which you're building that intimacy, and you're actually healing a heart through your loving presence. So I think that's beautiful. Thank you to whoever asked that question.
Very well answered. I think one of the challenges that I think a number of men have is not knowing what to do, and sometimes our immediate reaction is we need to kind of fix it.
Yeah.
And then it's either like, and we're not realizing we could be making things worse by putting pressure on our woman, asking what happened, tell me the ins and outs. I mean, she may not be ready to disclose that, the full details. It might even be traumatic for her to replay that at that time, because in our mind we want to know who the person was, so we can maybe do him over, when in reality that's not maybe what she needs. And sometimes it's a case of maybe not putting ourselves first in our ego, but trying to understand what she needs, and to kind of be there for her and to listen to her, like you said. So that was sound advice. I really appreciate that. Okay. I think I asked this question. Yeah, so from your research, what did you find most interesting from your research on your PhD research from looking at female sexuality and spirituality, and why?
Oh, what did I find most interesting? I think what I found most interesting, it was Gina Ogden's work again. She did the largest study on spiritual sexuality, and she self-funded it because, you know, there's no pharmaceutical industries looking to fund that stuff. And she studied people that had been in relationship 25 plus years, and she studied lots of different types of relationships, you know, LGBT relationships. She even studied sex workers, people that had had lots of trauma, all of this. And what she found when she studied, again, healthy sexuality, not dysfunction, but extraordinary, thriving, you know, life-giving sexuality, was that it was happening between these couples that have been together 25 plus years. And even after, you know, they weren't getting those hard erections anymore, they weren't getting as wet anymore, they still were having better sex than in their early years because of the energetic connection, the emotional connection, the new ways that they were exploring sexuality. So it doesn't matter, it's really in the brain, you know, our body parts and our genitalia is kind of like, it can be concentrated to those areas, but it's really our whole body, and it's stimulating the brain. And so I found that very inspiring, especially when you live in a culture that's like, oh, you're married now, your sex life's going to be over with. But it's actually a new portal to step into the most expansive sexual states ever. And Kirti and I just talked about this on our last podcast. You can be in a long-term relationship for 30, 40 years, and there's nothing that can beat that energetic connection. If you've been working on your relationship and you have this deep emotional intimacy, there's no way to replace that. That's powerful. That's really powerful for the sexual state. And if you're one of those people like myself that, you know, you haven't been in one of those, like, you haven't married your high school sweetheart and stayed in that relationship for the rest of your life, you can also get into that powerful energetic state by doing energy healing and energy medicine. And that's where, you know, the qigong comes in too, in my group, that shofar is doing, because and meditation comes in because you're learning how to shift your own energy, and then you work with another person who can shift their energy. And of course chemistry plays in too. You can create those states by staying in the moment to moment combining of your energy. So either way, you have, you know, you have the power to create these expansive bliss states. So I found that really fascinating. I loved it. Very different from what culture tells us.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Is there anything else that you want to plug or speak about that you've got upcoming for people to be aware of? Platform's yours.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I would say, you know, maybe just if people want to jump on my newsletter, it's at natashaedwina.com. I send out promos for the show every day. Sometimes I do pop-up, you know, circles. Sometimes I do free things. So it's just a good way to stay connected. As you know, Habib, people that talk about healthy sexuality are being censored a lot on these social media platforms. So I just want to kind of gather all the folks that are interested in this stuff and make sure that we have a connection through my newsletter. And it's also a good place, you know, to find out what I got going on in events and how to work with me. And my work has always been global. I think because I work at this wellness center, people come from all over the world to visit us. So I often work with people that have come there. So I've always set up my work virtual long before the pandemic, and even hypnosis you can do virtual. So I welcome, you know, all cultures. I love the blending together of, you know, this worldwide global perspective and seeing how we can learn from each other and heal within our own communities and expand that out.
Lovely. And are there any plans to come over to Europe? Do you have your Finnish background, right? Is that correct?
You're paying attention. Yeah, I'm half Finnish. My dad is Finnish American, 100% Finnish American, and he's third generation. I'm third generation. He's second generation in the U.S. And I've never been to Finland. I would love to go there and see, like, the you know, in the summer they have 24 hours of daylight or 23 hours of daylight. And stay in one of those little tubes with the I want to do all that stuff. I have never been to Europe. I would love to come over there. Who knows when you know, the travel opportunity is going to come, but I would love to. So no plans, but definitely I'll get there one day.
Yeah, but I'm sure in Europe we definitely would love to see you, and again for your work. Please
Oh,
continue doing what you're doing,
oh,
and
thank you. And
I'm hoping that you
you
can
come
finish
over
your
to my
PhD as
area
well.
sometimes too. You come to LA sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, I'm actually planning to. Well, again, depending on the travel restrictions, but I might be
Yeah.
coming this summer. But I'll keep you posted. But
Definitely, yeah, definitely keep me posted. I would love to send some folks to your workshop. I know plenty of men who are hungry for this information too. And I know you work mainly with men, right? Like you really work, you do a lot of
well,
workshops.
it's interesting you're saying that. So I target men because I think we've got enough um men telling women what they should do. So I'd like to focus my work to men.
Yeah.
But majority of people that attend my workshops are women. So that's
Oh,
why
interesting.
sometimes I'll just do men only workshops because
Uh-huh.
oftentimes when I do workshops, that's obviously open to men and women. Men feel
Uh-huh.
quite reluctant to kind of open up and speak honestly in the presence of a woman because of our egos.
Mm,
So that's why generally, again, if I do a workshop, it's open to men and women. Men generally wouldn't attend. Whereas
mm-hmm.
if I say it's specifically only to men, then they'll come. But again, I
Mm.
understand the male side and the ego the same way. Like people do ask me as well, is that why is it I always post about women's issues? Why don't I post about men's issues? And I said because we have so many resources and people speaking about men's issues, whether it's erectile dysfunction, porn addiction, this, that, and the other. Whereas
Yeah.
how many, like even you mentioned in your research, when we look at the research in the journals articles about women's issues, it's generally about so-called dysfunction. But when it's talking about
Yeah.
how to help women,
Yeah.
it's lacking. So when it's about the clitoris, when it's about sexual pleasure, female orgasm, it's like no, we can't talk about that. We need to
Yeah.
kind of restrict that. But when we need to speak about women's problems, everyone wants to kind of, and that's something that I kind of find quite
Yes.
problematic.
Yes.
That's
Same. Yeah.
yeah, that's another conversation altogether.
Yeah.
Are you planning to finish your PhD as well? Is that
Yeah,
something that
not anytime soon. I think I was just starting the dissertation process, and it kind of relates to what you're saying. I felt that it was hard for me to find a dissertation team because even the academic people are reluctant to sign on for a study on female pleasure. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. So when I finally got the team together, is when we were right in the heart of the pandemic, and here in California, you know, it was pretty restrictive, and most of the businesses were closed down for about a year. So the hotel wellness center that I work out of, and most of my referrals come from, was closed down for a year. So I was like, whoa, my income, you know, plummeted quite a bit. And then now I'm homeschooling my children too. So I'm just really focusing on bringing my business back, which is thriving now, thank goodness. But, you know, we're still in the up and up, and I want to get that really solid and probably start to create some courses just to, you know, I want to spread this information as much as possible, and you just can't spread it very far and wide working one-on-one or in small groups, even though I love doing that. So I'd like to create some courses, which also create another income source and free up some time, and then hopefully go back to the PhD dissertation. But absolutely, I plan to finish. It would probably only take me another year and a half, but I have to be very focused and kind of have somebody holding it down over here at home. So you know, that's the life
all
of
the best with that,
homemaker.
and hopefully it'll be published as well and turned into a book because we do
Oh,
need
yeah.
more women doing more, I would say, pleasure orientated work, not just
Yeah.
sex education. Because again, I think that we have more than
Yeah.
enough people speaking about the problems, whereas like what you're doing, speaking about pleasure and how to overcome certain issues, I think that's definitely important, not only for women
Yeah.
but for men as well. So
Well, and you
kudos to
too.
you.
I mean, your book is really about speaking about the deeper layers, you know, the deeper issues. It's not just about how the genitals function. And that's what a lot of the research is. And it's really disheartening. But that's the pharmaceutical industry too. It's like, oh, fix it with the pill. Don't look at the emotions. Don't look
Exactly.
at what else is going on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like I like to tell myself this because I always like to look for the silver lining, and I'm an optimist. I like to tell myself the world just isn't ready for my research yet. You know, the world
I was
isn't
just
ready
about,
for my
I was just,
dissertation yet. You know,
I was
maybe
just
when I
about to
get
say
back.
that,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm hoping that you actually finish it because
Mm-hmm.
even if the world doesn't necessarily appreciate it now, it might be
Mm-hmm.
not be it might be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, but at least it's
Right.
out there. Whereas
Yeah.
if you kind of keep it and don't share it with the world, people won't kind of benefit from it. So it's not really a case of, for me, it's not really a case of when the world is ready to accept our work,
Mhm.
because I think that's up to God, but it's our job to kind of put it out there, and whenever people's ready, they'll accept it. That's why I think it's important that we do have things that are like published, or whether it's or documentary, so it's out there so people can access it when the world is ready. So yeah,
100%. And being embodying it too. I think the most important thing right now, there's so much conflict in the world and all of this stuff. Again, if more people were actually embodying these pleasure states, these bliss states, we could change the world. So I think, maybe my role more is working with people and embodying this, and maybe not having my nose in the research journal. So I can there'll be time for that later, but we're working on the ground up right now, Habib. So definitely appreciate your work. Definitely always appreciate talking with you and
likewise.
hearing what's going on. And thank you for all these lovely questions.
No worries. I want to save this because I don't want to lose this. I think we're just coming to the hour mark, and I'll put obviously a full description and
Mm-hmm.
details of the upcoming webinar, which is going to be available from your website. So I'll put that up, and
Oh,
obviously I'll
awesome.
tell people to sign up for your. Is it a weekly newsletter? Is that correct?
It starts in a little over a week. Yeah, a week from Monday. Are
Yeah.
you talking
Okay.
about the workshop, the 12-week
No, the
inclusion?
newsletter. So I'll tell people about the workshop and also the newsletter you mentioned as
Oh
well.
yeah, the newsletter. That they just go to my website and then they get a free
Okay.
ebook about the mind, body, gut health. Yeah, when they sign up.
Okay.
So
I'll just forward people to your website and they find
yeah,
everything.
yeah,
Then.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Lovely. Well, thank you again, Natasha, for your time. And again, we'll speak again soon, hopefully. And again, for everyone that's listening, please check out Natasha and her fabulous work and also her podcast. She does have her podcast is also on YouTube, so you can actually
Mm-hmm.
watch it, not only listen to it. So again, just tap in Natasha Edwina, and again, natashaedwina.com to access her website and all the information about her upcoming
Mm-hmm.
workshop and the newsletter which you mentioned.
Yeah, and
So
all
yeah,
my links are in Instagram in my bio. So go ahead, everything's there for you.
lovely, lovely. Hope
Thank
you
you
have
so
enjoy the
much,
rest of your day.
Habib. It was
Enjoy
such
the
an
weekend.
honor. And thank you
No
everybody for
worries.
joining and all the hearts. I
Yeah,
loved it.
yeah. Thank you for everyone for again. Sorry, I wasn't even looking at that. I was just concentrating on you. But yeah, thank you for everyone for joining. And I'll save this and again, obviously, so people can be watching. I'm also going to put up on YouTube so people can benefit from it
Oh,
and
beautiful.
the fabulous work that you're doing. So enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too. Bye,
Take care.
everyone.
Bye.